I know we've talked to you before as Meet the Farmer TV, but here we are today with really pulling a whole bunch of people together in an annual event. Tell me how what you're doing in government really relates to farmers, small farms, local food, and the sort of the remaking of our food system.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, VICFA does such a great job of bringing people together to be a voice for common sense, for good, quality, locally grown food. And I've just learned so much from all y'all, from the organization, from the meetings, and it's really exciting. I mean, sometimes we're doing a rearguard action just to protect against bad things happening. There was no funding of NACE, for example, this year in the appropriations bill, which was good. We were trying to block this food bill that went through last week, protect the small farmers and that. Unfortunately, on the House side, there was sort of a coming together of the liberal advocacy groups and the big ag to defeat that, but we put up a good fight. But there are also things to be excited about. I mean, I think when we're looking at the green energy economy and moving away from these corporate bailouts that I've opposed, we're getting away from the bigger is better mentality really across our economy and starting to think again about community-based models. You know, what's so exciting to me about the green energy opportunities in Southern and Central Virginia is not just moving from, you know, oil to, say, canola oil. It's about keeping the value and money in the community. These ones that are working, these biorefineries, you go to the pump, 93 cents of every dollar you spend there stays in the community. So we're looking specifically for things that are not only new fuel sources, don't compete with food, locally owned and grown, with that going back, with the farmers having a stake in it. You know, there's a poultry digester we're looking at out in one of our counties, and what's really important, they could probably get some venture capital to come in and fund it, but then all that profit's going to go out. So we're seeing this not just as a chance to kind of throw a few more table scraps at our farmers. We want to get back to farming being something that actually benefits farmers. We're looking at a repopulation of our rural communities. Now, that may seem wide-eyed right now, but I think there are visionaries right now that are fighting for that vision, and you got this weird alliance of some pretty left and pretty right folks who really get it, and I think that can be a powerful message.
Now, how do we deal with this food safety issue? Everybody is so afraid of, we've had, you know, some E. coli and spinach, and the kind of the odd thing is it's been the really big organizations that have been the vectors for the food issues. It hasn't been the small farm. But I know we spent about 20 grand on a kitchen so we could sell a $7 jelly, and it took us a year to get, you know, a simple jelly approved. And the NAIs, it's really coming from this fear of food safety and forcing, you know, the consumers kind of come in an irrational way sometimes to you as a government agency of, you've got to protect us. How could you let this happen to us? But at the same time, if you really do everything possible to restrict and make something sterile, that doesn't work well either. And then you put everybody out of business, and you know, everything's going to have to be irradiated because it's the only way to be sure that you've killed all the bacteria. So what do you propose for sort of a middle of the road of keeping the small farmers going, making sure the public is protected, but not really having either side get so out of balance?
Well, I think there are two different problems that require two different solutions. The first problem is that the public, understandably, will overreact when they hear something scary. Well, what if my peanut butter is contaminated? Well, that's pretty scary. My kid might get sick and die. Now we have a news coverage and a corporate media that tends to thrive on fear and all that. The solution there, I think we need to do public education. We need to do our job of letting people know what is a rational risk, what's an irrational risk. The second problem is that I think sometimes Big Ag sees an opportunity in that to use this sort of fear to put in regulations that will crush the smaller farmers and really protect the bigger farmers. You know, we have a real crisis right now with our dairy farmers, with where the price of milk is, a lot of things that were totally beyond the control of our farmers. We also have had price reimbursement rates that haven't changed since 1978 for our dairy farmers. So obviously we want to get more support there to get through the tough times. On the other hand, some of the big dairy farmers are seeing who's shutting down. It's the small dairy operations that are shutting down. They can't afford to go 2-3 years of losses. They can't go another quarter. So oddly enough, we reconstituted the Dairy Caucus, bipartisan, up in Congress to try to deal with this crisis and look down the road. Suddenly you saw some of the bigger dairy elements kind of pulling back because maybe you see an opportunity to do that. So right now in our politics, when we have a debate like food safety, the only two voices are these consumer groups, which I think thrive on that overreaction to headlines. And then you have big ag, which sometimes has a very different set of priorities than the small farmer does. What's great about VICFA and other groups like it, and there aren't a lot of groups like it, is presenting that third option, which is consumers who really get it and like locally grown high quality food, and farmers who get it because they're talking about that quality product and safety. You know, VICFA was one of the first, I think it was Catherine, to say, look, you know, if you buy bad sausage from a local farmer, you know where to go. You get your accountability right up front. You don't need the FDA or USDA to be part of it. If you go to a nameless grocery store to buy sausage, you want to know someone looked at it. So this idea of having the same set of regulations for locally grown food and corporate food doesn't make sense. So I think if we fight on those levels, we really do go out and engage with the public, have conversations about what is and isn't, you know, a rational risk, and then we kind of create a political counterbalance to the voices that tend to define agriculture. You will see things change over time. But the other, I think, element that's out there right now is a real kind of, I think, legitimate populist pushback on the bigger is better corporate mentality. You know, in our banking sector, it was the big banks that failed. Our local banks, most of them held strong. Most of them hadn't made the bad loans. They hadn't gone for the greedy, overreaching. So when we go into cure banking, we don't want to punish our good local banks for what these big mega banks did and sort of betting on people failing, essentially. So I think there's a space right now in America that neither party has quite tapped into, folks who really want to get back to that decency and basic accountability that you get in something like the locally grown food movement.
Now, you're in politics. Creed Eads just said he wants to be governor and be sort of the farmer's governor. How do you, I mean, you've experienced a close election and the tough fundraising of that. How do you perhaps go against some of the big business that could be big contributors to campaigns and actually represent the small local people? How can those people form the same sort of political support that a big agribusiness conglomerate could?
Well, I don't take money from lobbyists, which sets me apart right up front from a whole lot of folks or corporate PACs. And so, you know, there is that world. I also come out of grassroots organizing in the nonprofit sector, so I actually believe in the decency and integrity of people. I think the media and both political parties tend to bank on people being dumb and reactionary. And if you treat them with that kind of politics, the debate will be lowered to that level. But if you raise it up, I'll give you an example. I actually really want to support healthcare reform, but I also supported the idea of taking the month of August to go out and road test this with the American people. Let's get their input. Now, I've been doing that all year, but every time I meet with people, I get even better ideas about how to do it. So yes, this is a serious problem that's really crushing a lot of our middle-class families, small business owners. A lot of farmers have a family member who does a second job just to get their health care coverage. I hear that all the time. So we have some real flaws in the system. But let's actually trust that people are intelligent enough to look beyond these 30-second scare tactics from the insurance companies or the oil companies and have the debate. And what you see, I think, happening, for example, with the energy debate was, you know, the scary big money politics will always win the first news cycle and the second news cycle. But if you get out there and you make your case, as I've tried to do to farmers on this, I understand why farmers are skeptical of this. And frankly, the first draft of the energy bill wasn't any good for farmers. But the last draft is one of the most exciting opportunities we've had for real value creation on our farms in generations, not the table scraps, the real entree stuff we're offering back to our farmers. But that's going to happen from going out and actually meeting with people. And farmers are a group that know to be skeptical of what they're getting from a 30-second spot. So I think there are no shortcuts. We just got to go out and have the conversation. And you know what? Sometimes I'll be wrong, and I'll figure that out from the conversations too.
So really, in a parallel, just like the large food safety issues, where instead of buying from a large label that you feel is ultra-inspected, by going down to that local level and face-to-face interactions with local farmers and getting your local food, you're really proposing that with politics too, sort of a local face-to-face, know your politician, know the man, know what's going on, versus just responding to large, big dollar scare tactics.
I think that's right. And you know, sometimes we can so put the founding fathers on a pedestal. It was a pretty elite-driven politics back in the day, and I I think we've actually developed the technology in some ways to make it easier now. 2-year election cycles, the money, all those are broken. I think we need fundamental overhaul. But what I find is a lot of politicians on both sides want to be in that echo chamber of DC, and they assume that if they talk to a trade association of farmers, they've talked to farmers. Well, sometimes those farm groups do a pretty good job, and other times I come home and I hear something very different than what the trade associations are saying up in Washington. So really there's no shortcut to going out and talking to people and listening.
Well, terrific. Well, if you want to have us follow you out there as Meet the Farmer TV and see you actually interacting with some farmers or some of the dairy issues, we're welcoming you to come with us.
We'd love to have you come along. We're doing a couple of things. I'm meeting with some dairy farmers in a couple of days down in Pittsylvania County. Don't know if that's this Tuesday or next Tuesday. It all bleeds together. But we should do a day on the farm together.
Yeah, well, I'd like to really kind of to draw in that local face-to-face politics along with the local food. I think that'd be really good.
Well, thank you for what y'all do. Keep it up.
Thank you.